Hello, Oliver Kemba here, and welcome to the final installment of the behind the scenes for my short dark comedy Last Christmas. If you haven't seen the film yet, now would be a great time to do so. The link is below. So far, we've been on set, we've looked at the sound design process, the color grading process, and today we're going to be looking at the score, which I composed myself. Last Christmas marks the first public outing of my composing, so I'm proud, albeit apprehensive, to be opening up the session for you today. There are 4 cues in the film, and I'm going to talk about just a couple of them today. Talking you through the melody, the tone that I wanted to create, choosing the right instruments, sample libraries, and any mixing or processing that we did on that sound. I'll be opening up my DAW, which is a digital audio workstation and not a literal DAW, and I'm working in Logic on a Mac. So let's start it all off by playing cue 1, which is the title theme. Cool, so what's happening there? Well, allow me to just quickly jump to the end of the film where there's this brilliant sort of big band jazz Christmas piece written by the fantastic Megan and Tobin, and they composed that in B flat major. So I was thinking about how to make that not feel like a random needle drop, but a cohesive part of the film's DNA. So I decided to do all my work in the minor version of that key, which is B flat minor. Just going to solo this piano track for you, and these chords aren't actually in the final film at all, but they served as the guide track for all of the orchestration that I then did below. So I wrote the chords in this sort of little downward progression here, and from that I then orchestrated all the instruments out separately, but it was all based on these notes. And let's just play that through to hear what it sounds like. So it's really quite simple. What are those chords? Well, let's quickly have a look. If I just select them here, Logic is telling me over here, very kindly, that it's a B flat minor with a major 7th. You know, I don't know, what's a dark comedy? Well, it's something dark and it's something light at the same time. And so struggling to find that perfect kind of tone, I thought a minor with a major 7th had sort of the best of both worlds kind of sound that I needed to set the right tone for this film. Not too dark, not too light kind of thing. The second chord is just a B flat major. So we have a tiny little moment of just pure happiness, and it also puts the sound of a B flat major in the audience's head, which I think was important early on, so that then when you get to the ending, you sort of recognize that sound as part of the universe. And then the last chord progression is an E flat 7th. If I shrink this, you'll see that these 2 notes are the same as these 2. It has the sort of hangover feeling of a B flat minor, but it's actually technically now an E flat 7th. And then we just have this 2-note descending pattern, which to me captured the kind of disappointment and sense of deflation that the character Polly has when she comes down the staircase and sees Santa, and he's not what she expected. So I took those chords and I split them out into the various string parts. You'll see the same kind of chords and downward progression sequence here. You'll see a bass pizzicato going from root to 5th. And let me just play that through for you, and you can hear just what the strings sound like on their own. Cool, so the strings you've probably noticed are Spitfire chamber strings, and I've done some extra panning just to really get that stereo width and get that separation of the instruments from left to right. I've left the bass in the middle because I've sort of used up my stereo width, and it's a fairly traditional thing to do, is just leave the bass as the pulse in the middle of the soundscape. In the cello, we have a long consordino, which is a long but with a mute on the strings. The viola plays a tremolo, and I know it says legato, but actually this isn't a legato patch. Violin 2 is playing a legato patch tremolo. I think this one blended nicely between the notes. Also a good time to talk about the modulation that's happening to bring these notes to life. So there's a bit of expression there, which is basically volume, CC21, which is vibrato in this library, and then modulation, which is how hard the player is playing the note. And you can see what effect that has here. It swells in. We skip forward a bit. Just sort of helps push each new note out as if the players, you know, drop the note to change their bow, and then they push it out a bit louder. And then the last is another tremolo on the first violins, but this time sul pont, so closer to the bridge, so even more scratchy sounding. So the two violin sections are playing tremolo, as you can see there. The viola is also playing tremolo, so it immediately just gives this sort of nervous energy and sort of unsettled texture to the film. The cello plays muted, and then there's bass pizzicato, so there's no normal long notes in the string section in the opening, and I think that gives it all a sort of slightly eerie, unsettled feel. To add to that, I just wanted a bit of brass to give it a bit of low end, bit of welly, so I'll just play that. Then I added some percussion, and that's just a solo frame drum from Impact Soundworks. And there's a bit of reverb here, a 1.9 second reverb tail. Just hit that again with it off. Just kind of helps the sound ring out for a tiny little bit longer, which I think is nice. It's a fairly dryly recorded instrument, that. And with all of that together, with that little S here selected, it plays only the things that you selected. So I think it's not bad. It's not very Christmassy though, and there was just something missing. So I was thinking about sort of Christmas songs and Christmas tunes and stuff like that, and wondering if there was anything I could beg, borrow, or steal from those. And I was sort of whistling. I thought, okay, I'll run with that. So I added a melody that starts with that. It goes its own direction, but placed over the minor key and the tremolo strings, I think it feels like Christmas, but a dark version of Christmas. It's kind of a distant memory of a Christmas song, but it's also its own thing. I'll play you just the melody on its own, and you can hear how that sounded. So what makes that up? You have a harp sample. This is the Glissando concert harp from Chocolate Audio. I bought this one because it had the most interesting selection of articulations. Some of them are recorded just pizzicatos, there's guitar picks, there's nails, there's little rubber mallets. They've even sampled it by rubbing a piece of tinfoil across it. And no one else had done such interesting things with a harp, so they got my money on that one. And the toy box is actually a free toy box from WavesFactory Audio. And then right in the middle, we have this kind of arpeggio packing out the harp number. And they're just on separate channels because I sort of recorded them in separately. So just the melody sounds fine, maybe a bit lifeless. Then you add this kind of arpeggio figure, and I think it just spices it up a bit. So all of those come together and sound like this. I wanted the score to sound intimate and realistic, obviously, and as if played by real players. Who doesn't want that? So why Spitfire chamber strings? Well, they have much smaller section sizes than most other libraries. I think they go 4, 3, 3, 3, 3, from first violins through second, viola, cello, and down to bass. And those smaller section sizes just give it a more intimate kind of texture. Also, the short film is set in a small room, so a smaller string kind of sound made sense for what you're looking at on screen. I don't think it's a hard rule that things have to match the reverb of the space you're in, but for this, the whole film is in one room, so why not? There's kind of a psychological angle here as to why I chose Spitfire chamber strings, and that's because on a short film, you would imagine if we'd had the budget to record with live players, we would have done it in a smaller kind of soundstage with smaller section sizes, and that's what the score sounds like. And I think because of that, you almost feel like it's more real somehow than a massive orchestral score that obviously doesn't fit the budget of a short film that would have just given the whole game away. You'll notice that I have the close mic all the way up full, and that's across the board, sometimes not even the tree mic. And that gives that really close, dry sound, which doesn't betray the fact that these strings are actually recorded in a massive echoey room, which is the hall at Air Studios, probably one of the most reverby rooms that you can record a score in. But using the close mics and with these articulations, they're played so quietly that you don't hear the natural bloom of the room come in. So you kind of get away with it. They were real at some point. They're not performing these notes live. But that's something I'm going to be doing more going forward. Mixing wise, there's not a whole lot going on actually. The toy box I've EQ'd fairly heavily, so let's listen to that on and off. Off. On. I think it was just pulling out some of the slightly more dodgy frequencies. So that's the opening cue. I hope that kind of makes sense. Sounds like Christmas, but not really Christmas. A little dark, a little moody. It's kind of its own thing. It's kind of borrowing from an iconic tune. Something slightly sinister going on with this harp and this toy box theme. So let's move on to the second cue. So as before, I'll just play this through and then we can break down what the separate instruments are. Let's quickly open this up. So we have a drum roll from Hans Zimmer. Thank you very much, Hans. There's this cool thing in Hans Zimmer. If you click the name at the top there, it goes yellow, and then whichever one is playing lights up. So now I know that's a bombos. And then we have this lovely impact sound, and to get that I'm just using the far mic here, and that's got lots of the lovely natural reverb sound of the hall at Air Studios. That's a close sound, also good, but you can sort of really hear the beater on the drum, and I just wanted it to sound like a distant thought. So the Olafur Arnalds Evolutions are these amazing textural string libraries. The instrument loads with all of these infinite different options of combinations of textures, and you'll see on the keyboard behind me, they light up as you change the Evo grid, which is just a really cool little bit of software and hardware talking to each other. But I didn't want them to be super textural and reverby with lots of the delay on. So you can see I've pulled the reverb and the delay down to 0. And then I have essentially just gone through the sounds one by one and auditioned them like this. And then I discovered that I liked section 8 quite a lot for this particular texture. And it's just one note playing that one texture through, and that's violin 1. And then I did the same again, and I found that texture 2 for violin 2 was really nice. So playing those two together gave me this sound. And the actual notes are just this sort of jaggedy up down sense of fluttering between two different ideas. Is he going to get out of here? Is he going to not get out of here? Is she going to believe him? Is she not? Again, if I click on the viola, you'll see that that's the same thing again, where I've just found a texture that I liked, number 7, pulled out all of the more effectsy sounds, and then I've played that through as well. And then there's a cello comes in, and we're almost back to our full string section. But they're now just solo players, so it's super, super, super intimate. And then they end, and there's an impact sound, and we drop into this beautifully lit 2-shot. So all of this sort of tension comes to an end, and you have this lovely one-take shot. And to emphasize that, there was a hit on the harp here, and this hit sound, again, is sampled by the lovely people at Chocolate Audio. And it's the sound of the notes being hit, and it just rings out for days, and I think it's really lovely. And then we have the harp and toy box, but I think I mentioned at the beginning that the main melody for Polly is created with a harp and a toy box sound coming together to create this one melody sound. So now she's flitting between these two different ideas of, is he Santa, isn't he Santa? And you've got Steve, am I going to be able to get out of there? Am I not? And so I wanted to pull those two sounds apart and reveal them as the separate elements they are. So I'll just play this through for you now, and you will see that the harp plays this 5-note chord, and then the toy box plays this 5-note chord downwards. What is this? It's the same B flat minor major 7th that opens the film, except now it's being almost strummed. And then you have the same B flat minor, but coming downwards now with a couple of extra notes on the toy box that technically make it a E, no 3, 6, flat 9, flat 5. And then together they have this line that ascends and kind of pirouettes around the ending. And right on the end of that last little playthrough, I automate in some reverb from Send 2, which is this 6.6 second, very long reverb tail that belongs to this lovely large warm hall preset from VSS3. And I've been saying throughout, I sort of like that drier sound generally, but in this instance I wanted the toy box to ring out with the harp hit, and I will just play those through, and you'll hear that kind of ringing out effect at the end. And then because that harp hit goes on for days, I just manually faded it out there. So that's that. Let me just quickly play this through for you one last time. And you can hear how all of the different parts go into this lovely piece of rising tension here, as Polly confronts Steve, telling him how it works being Santa. I think it's amazing that I can take all of these different sounds played by all of these wonderful people from all over the world and bring them all together in one room and have them create the mood for this short film, and without them even realizing it. So a massive thank you to the developers and all the players in these various libraries for contributing their hard work and their lifetime of practice to my humble short film. So that's a look at a couple of cues from last Christmas, and that brings this series to a close. Hope you've enjoyed the other videos along the way, and that today you learnt a couple of things about the kinds of tones and textures that I was reaching for as a composer and also as the director of this project. Thanks to the cast and crew for giving me such lovely material to work with. Thank you so much to you, finally, for tuning in and for sticking with me on this series of videos breaking down the making of Last Christmas. And I'll be back again soon with more content on newer projects. So I'll see you again here very soon. Bye-bye.